I think I've said this in a couple of videos where eventually I'm going to have to bite the bullet and see Norm in the North, but I wanted to wait till I could see it possibly for free, and you know what? Now I can finally review it. You've probably already heard a lot about Norm of the North and how it's a really bad animation, it's a straight-to-DVD animated movie put into theaters, and it's quite the atrocity. It came out back in January, so I'm sure you've heard it from other reviewers, but I just now saw it about a week ago, so now I get to review it. Joy. Even for an animated film that's just supposed to be for kids, this has one of the stupidest stories I have ever seen. The basic plot is Norm is a polar bear and he lives in the Arctic. And for some reason they get a lot of tourists that feed him fish if they perform and stuff. But eventually he stumbles upon a house and, yeah, someone wants to build houses, condos, in the Arctic. He wants to build houses for people to buy and live in the Arctic. Let that sink in a bit.
I'm gonna be so rich when I sell off the Arctic. It's gonna be condos, shopping malls.
Well, they don't want humans invading and living in their home, so Norm has to go out to New York and stop these buildings from happening. Thankfully, he has a special gift where he can talk to humans. Yeah, only him and his grandfather have it, so it must have been genetic. Now granted, that's not new for animated films. Plenty of animated films have done that with talking animals. But the movie even goes out of its way to make sure that only Norm and the grandfather can speak to humans, because it's their birthright as being kings of the Arctic. I'm not making this stuff up. Oh boy, where do I start with this movie? Well, usually in my videos I start with the positives, so positives of Norm of the North. I'm gonna have to think a bit for this one. Oh. It's got a positive message. They do have an environmental message to the film, but they really bash it in there. Like, you're reminded that Norm has to save the Arctic several times, sometimes more than once during a scene. It's almost like they know that the audience is going to be bored, and so they're like, hey, wake up, don't worry. There's a story to this, there's a meaning to it, we better remind you before you doze off again. Or they think the audience is completely stupid and they're like, oh, kids are dumb, so we gotta lay this out for them several times throughout the movie. Also, the film starts off with Norm being a complete outcast for the rest of the polar bears and the rest of the Arctic. I mean, they do paint him out to be not only a bit of a loser, but a little too sympathetic for his own good. After all, he is a polar bear and he has to hunt, and yes, this movie tries to have that realistic sense where polar bears do have to eat, and so he has to hunt a seal.
In the wild, when you don't fit in, life can be a real bear. Especially
Well, because this is an animated cartoon and because he's the hero, he can't eat the seal.
Why didn't you take a picture? It'll last longer.
And so it makes you wonder, if they put the effort to do that, then what exactly does he eat to survive? I guess he caught a lot of fish, but they don't show him doing any of that kind of stuff, so I don't know. I'm at a loss. What does he eat to survive if he will not kill an animal? But even with the film starting with this loser outcast vibe that normally I like in films, because I love the underdog story, I love stories where there's an outcast and he becomes the hero. But unfortunately with this movie, it just felt like something was very off with it. I can't put my finger on it. Maybe it's just because Norm was just too stupid of a character for me to actually care about him. But then again, almost every person in this film is completely dumb. So even though I can think of a few tad little positives to this film, they're canceled out with the negative parts of those positives. So, honestly, there's no positive to this film. And so you probably know exactly what rating I'm going to give this film, but hey, let's talk about why it's so bad. For one, this is supposed to be a straight-to-DVD animated film, and because of that, yeah, the animation is really bad. Now, it does look a little better than some other straight-to-DVD CGI animated films, but most of that is canceled out due to the fact that it's not nearly as great as anything else put into theaters nowadays. There's a lot of character designs that really look wacky and just plain ugly to look at. And the backgrounds are so generic and bland and completely empty, especially in the Arctic. And so while there might be a little bit more polished than you might expect for most straight-to-DVD animated CGI films, there's plenty of things to really make it ugly. Which again begs the question, why is this in theaters? Well, because some bigger company saw this and was like, oh, we want an animated film, so let's give you some more money and we can bring it out in theaters. Thank you, Lionsgate. I also want to mention, there was one point in this movie where I did look at the clock because I wanted to see how much more time I had with this movie. And I realized I was only 10 minutes in. 10 minutes in, and I was already wanting it to be over with. Now, I did mention earlier that this movie has some of the dumbest characters I have seen in animated films, and pretty much every single person is dumb. The only one that isn't dumb is the little girl. The little girl is the only one that's not dumb, and she's supposed to be smart. Well, everyone else is just so freaking dumb. Hell, in this animated film, there's enough people in this movie that get convinced and think, yeah, buying a house in the Arctic would be a good idea. I totally buy that. The whole world is full of dumb people in this movie. And then there's the fact that very few people actually realize that Norm is a real bear. I think the only people that catch on really quick is two dumb henchmen, which, yeah, they've seen a talking bear before, so they know that Norm is a talking bear. Mr. Green, the villain of the film, who believes it at first, then gets duped into believing that he's just an actor, and then realizes, nope, he is a bear. Smart villain. And the little girl. Everyone else in this movie didn't realize Norm was a bear. But then you realize, hey, it's a cartoon. Maybe they just believe he's in a very realistic bear suit. The problem is, this movie shows the competition, and you can't really take it seriously once you realize or imagine yourself in this world. You see, there's this audition to actors in bear suits that want to help sell the Arctic for Mr. Green. Norm's bright idea is to audition so that none of these other people get the part, and so he gets the part and he has total control, which makes sense, honestly.
Well, Mr. Green wants to use me to sell the Arctic, and I'm gonna use the Arctic to save it.
Exactly. You have to rally the public so that they love you, wait for your moment, and turn them against Green. Use his own plan to defeat him. But the key is to make sure you time your moment just right when the public loves you the most.
But then you see all the bear costumes, they absolutely look nothing like Norm. Like, they're all way too cartoony.
Okay, I'm not quite getting King of the Arctic. It's more like Queen of the Prom.
Bear, 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 bear.
I need something.
The character models of the humans, they're really bland. I was convinced at one point that I was seeing a Bratz doll on screen.
I needed this. You have no idea. This day has been something else.
Doesn't she look like a Bratz doll? She looks like a Bratz doll. Mr. Green is a horrible villain. This movie has him doing crazy animation and just always moving his arms and doing these weird motions and unhuman characteristics. It's just he never stops moving, and he's just so wacky, and it's just like, what the hell is going on?
You and me, I tell ya, there's nothing to tell about.
It's like, hey, we can't make a convincing villain, so let's make him entertaining and just like, going crazy like. And the lemmings, obviously trying to be minions. Very, very unsuccessful. You know what's terrible about these lemmings? They're dumb, and most of the jokes revolve around them either being indestructible.
What's he doing?
He wants you to stomp on him. He wants you to prove how tough he is.
Could he sign a release first? I'm gonna get like lemming juice everywhere.
Do it.
I killed him. If I go down, Socrates, I'm taking you down with me.
Wait for it. Wait for it.
You're invincible.
Or it's a pee or fart joke. There's a pee joke that these lemmings do that goes on way, way too long. It just, you know what? I'm just going to show you a clip. I'll show you a clip. It'll be the entirety of the clip, and you decide if this is way too long.
Hey guys, toilet's right there. Help yourselves. Whatever.
You know what happens right after that clip? The second they get into Green's office, they go to a plant and start peeing again. Why? Honestly, I wanted these lemmings to jump off a cliff. Just push them off. There's also this subplot with the mother and daughter. The only reason she's working for Mr. Green is because he'll help her daughter get into this big, important school. And it's funny, the movie sets it up really quickly, and then in the middle of the film, it pretty much forgets about it until the very end where she actually gets in the school. Now, I understand there probably isn't too many plot points that needs to be said for this particular subplot, but it literally gets forgotten about. And even though this movie did set up a outcast sort of thing with Norm, it's really hard to believe that these animals wouldn't believe him when he says that there's a house out in this area in the Arctic. Like, he literally convinces them. All he has to do is say, hey, there's a house, or bring something from the house, and it would make sense. They'll be like, oh, there might be really something there, we should check it out. He even brings an item from the house, and they all laugh at him.
Humans are moving here now. Look, from Florida.
Granted, it's a flamingo, but they all laugh at him, and they're just like, ah, he's crazy. Again, dumb characters in this movie. Also, Mr. Green must have been a super fast editor. Maybe it's from his crazy freaking arms and legs and just his crazy movements. Like, there's this one part, Norm is going to save the Arctic. He's got all the approval. He's got all these people on his side. And so now he's actually going to speak his truth and say, hey, Green is moving into our home, so maybe you should not buy into Mr. Green. Like, he says a few words, and then suddenly the mic goes out. Mr. Green somehow, within maybe not even a whole second, it's probably, it might be a second and a half.
So someone somewhere thought it was a good idea to build in the Arctic. That someone is our friend, Mr. Green. I just wanted to let you all know the truth about what this would mean for my...
Norm of the North supports green homes in the Arctic.
There's one joke in this entire film that sound like it actually at least tried. Like, all the rest of the jokes are super lazy, very just common, lowest denominator. And as bad as this joke is, this is the point where it actually tries. So here's the joke.
I don't think you like the outfit. Norm, can you please come out?
I think I just did.
Yeah, that was the joke that seemed like it had the most effort put into it. That joke. Everything else far, far worse. So if you hate that joke, you're going to hate all the other jokes much more. And now I understand, oh, it's just a kid's movie, it's just animated. Who cares? It's for the kids. It's entertainment for the kids. Why are you being so harsh on it? Well, for one, I am not convinced that this is just for kids. There are a few jokes here and there that are more for adults, such as the one joke I just previously played. And towards the beginning of the film, there is a puberty joke. Like, there are a few jokes that feel like it's trying to be more adult friendly. And so if an animated film tries to do some little adult joke, shouldn't you judge it as a family film rather than just a kid's film? And since I'm judging it as a family film, then yeah, this movie fails. I'm sure there'll be kids out there that like it, but for the most part, this movie feels terrible for kids as well. Like, what kid is gonna care about real estate and someone building homes in the Arctic and approval ratings? What kid's gonna care about that? Honestly, this feels like one of those animated films that seems like it makes kids dumber by watching it. But if you don't mind that, by all means, take your kids to Norm of the North. Honestly, in my town, you can still see Norm of the North in theaters. You can still see it in theaters. I think it came the week after The Revenant. Revenant's gone in my theaters. But the Norm of the North, still hanging in there. Still must be making money, because they're not getting rid of it. And we have Kung Fu Panda 3 out right now. People are still seeing Norm of the North. I also looked it up. This might not be that big of a number compared to plenty of other movies, but it's far higher than it should. Norm of the North, box office mojo last time I checked, $16 million in the box office. 16 million. Now, I know that's not a lot compared to other movies, but still, that's way more than Norm of the North should get. People are still seeing Norm of the North. Hopefully most of that is just in an ironic way, where they just want to see just how bad it is, because it is bad. I think you probably all know exactly what Norm of the North is getting from me. I'm giving Norm of the North absolute 0. Were you expecting anything different? There is one thing Norm of the North has going for it. I don't think it's the worst film of the year so far. I think that title goes to 50 Shades of Black still. But you know what? I'm gonna probably see another movie soon that also might get a 0, judging from all the things I've heard about it. It's a remake. It came out this February. I do have plans on seeing it. Maybe I'll have a 0 in February as well. So, did you see Norm of the North? Hopefully in an ironic way where you just want to see how awful it was. And if you have seen Norm of the North, what did you think about it? If you didn't see Norm of the North, what is the worst animated film you have ever seen? Absolute worst. And if you like this video, go ahead and subscribe and check out my other videos. I have playlists of 2015 movie reviews and 2016 movie reviews. As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.